What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. Today we're going to be taking a look at something that I personally found to be extremely interesting, and that is items in old school RuneScape that actually exist in the game. They are currently in the game today, but they are just unobtainable to all players. All the items in the list that we're taking a look at today are actually coded into the game files, but there just doesn't exist a way to legitimately obtain them in-game. And it's kind of just a bunch of random stuff, maybe it's things that only JMods can access, or maybe it's stuff that'll get released in the future. Who knows, but I definitely just wanted to take a look at them because I think these are just kind of cool. So if you think they're cool too, definitely hit that like button and let us know in the comment section below, and be sure to subscribe for some more videos. So to kick off our list, we've got actually a little bit of a funny one, and it's an item in-game that is known as burnt pita bread. It's exactly what you think it is. It's what happens when pita bread is overcooked and gets burned. However, it just so happens that it's actually literally impossible for players to obtain burnt pita bread because it's not possible to burn pita bread at the level required to cook it. It requires level 58 cooking to be able to cook pita bread, but by then players are also beyond the burn range for pita bread, which makes burnt pita bread completely unobtainable. This is actually kind of funny, as Jagex later acknowledged the design flaw by saying that the fail chance is already 0 by the time you reach the minimum level required to cook it. It's kind of interesting how this one's in the game but just unobtainable, really just because the development team had a little bit of an oversight way back in the day when making the game. And next up, we're taking a look at the rock climbing boots, which were actually implemented into the game with the intention of them actually never being obtainable from the start. This one was honestly a troll item from the start. It was released alongside the Grand Exchange in February of 2015, and the item would show up in the Grand Exchange when you would search for it, but it was never actually obtainable by any means, and kind of just served like a dummy item. I wonder if they were maybe using it to test different features of the Grand Exchange with it, or something like that. Next, we have another item that also appeared while searching on the Grand Exchange, but was never actually obtainable, and it's the Cidian disguise, which was thought to be intended for use while completing the feud quest, but was replaced with another item called the desert disguise. This must have been done during development, but the reason is kind of unknown. It's definitely interesting that the unused version of the item was left in the game for everyone to see, but not to actually use. And I gotta say, it's quite interesting how a lot of the items in today's video that we're taking a look at only exist in the game because of some weird development things that happened way back in the day, over 13 years ago or something like that, that just happened to kind of make it into the game today because of the backup that was used to create old school RuneScape. Anyway, on to the next item. Next up we have the Relic. Unlike the Dark Relic or the Ancient Relic, this item was simply called the Relic, and it appeared in a cutscene during the release of the Devious Minds quest back in December of 2005. Players completing the quest had to help an assassin reach Entrana. After arriving to their destination, the assassin then kills a bunch of monks that were protecting the Relic. The assassin steals the Relic, and then players have to inform Certification of the theft. The player is however left on the hook with Certification telling him that he'll just be in touch with the player eventually. It's easily assumed that based on what happened in the quest, this relic could have been a pretty powerful item. There's a ton of items in the game that are already affiliated with Saradomin, so it's not that far off assuming that maybe it'll get implemented into the game somehow eventually, especially if you consider the fact that it's still coded into the game. It would be pretty amazing to see something like a new quest being released about it where the player finds that same assassin and maybe obtains the relic in some kind of way. Next up we have a magic tablet, but it's for a pretty peculiar spell. It's actually for Telekinetic grab. This now unobtainable item was intended to originally be created on a lectern for, of course, the spell Telekinetic grab. So I guess it looks like when spell tabs were originally released on the lectern, Jagex almost certainly considered adding quite a few other spells to them, Telekinetic grab being the obvious one. It's kind of crazy to think about, but the possibilities honestly could have been endless. Maybe they even considered having every single spell in the game being able to create using the lectern, but then at that point, what's the point of the magic skill anyway? So I gotta say it's kind of nice that they limited it to the spells that they have now. And real quick, I just wanted to mention that we recently just opened up a Discord server for the community on this channel, and we'll be looking for some people to help us with videos in the future. So if you're interested, check out the link in the description, come say hi, maybe help us make some videos, and thanks for watching. And for our next item, we have the Blood Tithe pouch, which was actually released in September of 2006. When the item is examined, it tells us that it's a pouch filled with blood. Players can actually see this item in-game during a cutscene for the Darkness of Hallowvale quest. It's however not obtainable in any way to players. Similar to kind of the Relic item. This is yet another quest item that's shown in a cutscene but never actually presented or released. It'd be pretty interesting to see such items kind of maybe find a way back into the game somehow in a connecting quest in the future, or maybe even in a special event simply to give a little nostalgia to the older players. And next on our list we have cornflour. Now this one's particularly interesting because, wait a minute, cornflour exists in the game. Now, bear with me. This item was released alongside the Recipe for Disaster quest, of course the 100th quest to release for Runescape, and it was assumed to be made using sweet corn on a windmill. However, when you do that, you use a pot, which actually results in a pot of cornflour instead. So it's actually very similar to the burnt pita bread earlier from our list, which is another unobtainable item that comes from the result of just an oversight in game design. Because this item of potless cornflour does actually exist in the game somehow still today. However, it's unsure if this is intentional or it's just kind of an accident that the developers overlooked at one point. Next up on our list is an item that's kind of interesting because it's an item that does actually exist in the game, although in a different way, and that is a bucket. Now of course buckets exist in the game, but I'm talking about one particular specific bucket. This unobtainable bucket can actually be found all throughout Mireditch. However, if a player attempts to actually pick up the bucket, they'll get a message saying, "I really do not want to go anywhere near that, it stinks." Even more interesting, if a player attempts to cast Telekinetic grab on the item, the results will be a different message saying, "I really don't want to waste runes grabbing this item." Based off these messages, we can safely assume there are some pretty nasty stuff in those buckets. It's definitely a pretty nice touch when Jagex adds items that contribute to the game world and the experience around it, even if it's something that's not actually obtainable. You know, it's one of those little things that just kind of comes together to make old school RuneScape such a charming game. Feeding into the lore and atmosphere of the game using these random items is definitely something that's really immersive and just awesome in general. And another unobtainable item that you can't get that actually still exists in the game is Ahab's beer. This item is really just a glass of beer that's in the Port Sarim pub. However, despite its normal appearance, it's actually completely unobtainable even through telegrabbing. The problem is that if you actually try to take the beer that's on the table, Ahab will pretty much yell at you telling you to leave his beer alone. Even if you try to telegrab it, Ahab will just yell at you and say don't cast spells on his beer. Kind of just a fun little nugget that exists in the game, you know, kind of fun that you can still see the item even though you can never actually obtain it. And this item was released way back in September of 2005, so it's kind of just like a relic of the past of just a bunch of random stuff that was added into the game. I wonder if there was ever intended to be like some purpose, or maybe it was supposed to be used in a future quest that never actually got released or cancelled or something like that. However, you can right click on it and examine, and it just has the text that says "looks nice." Another unobtainable item that exists in the game is something that was released alongside the Tourist Trap quest in April of 2003, and that is the Sailing Book. This item can actually be seen in-game if you search a bookshelf in Captain Cidian's office, which is upstairs in the desert mining camp. Particularly interesting considering the fact that way back in the day, sailing was definitely a skill that was rumored to be in development, and is something that actually pretty much got developed for old school RuneScape today. So it's likely that this book perhaps had something to do with the sailing skill, design, or had some sort of connection with it. And unsurprisingly, if you right click and examine the book, it would read, "A book for sailors." Anyway, that's just about going to wrap up our list of items that exist in the game but happen to be unobtainable, and there's really just no way to get them in the game right now. It's particularly interesting to see if maybe somehow some glitch in the future might make it so that these items are obtainable or something like that. You know, there's been quite a few glitches in RuneScape 3 that happened where supposedly unobtainable items had some kind of thing happen to them, and then all of a sudden some players actually managed to find a way to get them. So maybe something like that could happen with old school RuneScape in the future, or maybe Jagex will just release some of these, who knows. Definitely let us know in the comment section below which items you wish were still obtainable in old school RuneScape, or which ones you maybe thought were interesting. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.